Buffalo walked out of Thanksgiving weekend with more than leftovers. They came out with a storm of injury issues and a roster shakeup that could shape the final stretch of the season. Right after the holiday dust settled, the Bills found themselves dealing with one of the roughest updates we've seen all year. Before we dive deeper into the latest breaking news, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and hit the bell icon so you never miss fresh Buffalo Bills updates. Alright, let's roll into the big story. The fallout from Week 12 against Houston was brutal. Josh Allen was taken down 8 times, the most sacks he has ever absorbed in a single game, and that beating left the offensive line shattered. The tackles, already stretched thin, didn't escape the carnage. Spencer Brown exited in the fourth quarter, heavily taped up and clearly dealing with major shoulder damage. On the opposite side, Dion Dawkins was being checked for a concussion. Now the real blow, both starting tackles are set to miss this week's matchup. And it's not just any opponent. Buffalo is staring down a Pittsburgh defense loaded with pass rush firepower, headlined by T.J. Watt and Alex Highsmith. After watching Allen get punished in Houston, this is the last thing the Bills needed. There was early concern that Brown might be headed to injured reserve, but Buffalo held off on that move for now. The team did place another player on IR earlier today, which opened the door for some internal shifting. That sliver of optimism means Brown could return sooner than feared, but nothing is guaranteed. With both tackles sidelined, Ryan Van DeMark steps into a huge role after filling in late last week. He'll be paired with Chase Lunt, a player we've barely seen after spending most of the early season on injured reserve. Now, ready or not, he's being thrown into the fire against one of the most relentless defensive fronts in football. Even the interior wasn't spared. Connor McGovern took hits, Osiris Torrance took hits, the entire unit walked away bruised. And now, with a dangerous Steelers front waiting, the Bills' offensive line enters the week as one of the team's biggest concerns. Even with David Edwards returning to full strength, the situation in front of Josh Allen is still shaky. Buffalo's offensive line, once viewed as one of the most reliable groups in the league, has taken a clear step back heading into a matchup that carries massive playoff consequences. Facing Pittsburgh at 6-5, the Bills can't ignore what's at stake. A loss would flip the standings and drop Buffalo into the "in the hunt" territory that nobody in Western New York wants to revisit. While outside results helped, Kansas City stumbling on Thanksgiving and Baltimore taking a hit as well, none of that matters if Buffalo can't handle its own business. And right now, the biggest obstacle is the battered offensive front protecting number 17. Adjustments are going to be critical this week. The lack of extra protection against Houston left Allen stranded far too often, with 4-man rushes reaching him before plays even had time to develop. That can't happen again. With both tackles out, keeping another blocker in tight formations might be the only way to stabilize the pocket long enough for the offense to function. But the injuries don't stop there. Josh Palmer, who had been limited earlier in the week, suddenly shifted to a non-participant on Friday. That kind of late-week downgrade usually signals trouble for Sunday availability, and Buffalo may need to prepare for his absence. Linebacker Terrell Bernard has already been ruled out after taking a hard shot last week, a season that has already been filled with one injury after another for him. From ankle issues to upper body problems, he's been battered throughout the year, and it's clear the staff is being cautious with every new setback. Buffalo's depth will be tested across multiple levels of the roster. And with Pittsburgh on deck, a team that thrives on capitalizing when opponents are short-handed, the Bills must find answers quickly if they plan to avoid another costly setback. The hope now is simple: get healthy bodies back in time for the final stretch. Matt Milano can't shoulder the entire load by himself, and the Bills know it. With Terrell Bernard sidelined again, the defense will lean on Shaq Thompson and Dorian Williams, two players who stepped in admirably last week but now face even greater responsibility. Depth isn't optional anymore, it's survival. But the conversation eventually circles back to the offense, and this is where frustration has boiled over for much of the fan base. The organization has spent money attempting to surround Josh Allen with reliable weapons, yet the results haven't matched the investment. And nothing illustrates that better than the Curtis Samuel situation. Samuel's time in Buffalo never found rhythm. Availability remained an issue, production lagged behind expectations, and every attempt to integrate him into the offense felt like a reset rather than progress. Now he heads to injured reserve, guaranteeing at least 4 games on the shelf and effectively ending his season before the Bills' late playoff push even begins. Given the contract and the output, it's clear his future in Buffalo is limited. Once the off-season arrives, the team will almost certainly move on. With Samuel down, the Bills made the expected roster adjustment and promoted Gabe Davis to the active roster. It was only a matter of time. His impact, versatility, and physical style give the offense something it simply can't afford to lose, especially now. Relying on practice squad elevations all year was never a sustainable plan, and Samuel's injury simply forced the timeline forward. The Samuel chapter ends with disappointment: fewer than 40 receptions in 2 seasons, minimal scoring production, and long stretches on the sideline. Buffalo needed more. The quarterback needed more. And the organization is left evaluating how one of its high-cost offensive decisions delivered so little in return. Curtis Samuel's departure doesn't exactly reshape the offense, simply because his presence was never consistent enough to rely on. There was never a stretch where he truly anchored himself into the weekly game plan, so calling this addition by subtraction doesn't fit either. His absence changes little. Buffalo was already used to functioning without him. Now the attention shifts to Gabe Davis, the receiver stepping into a larger role as the Bills try to stabilize a battered offense. He hasn't exploded out of the gate since returning, but he brings something the unit desperately needs: trust from the quarterback. Even in a quiet outing against Houston, even through the ups and downs of his own recovery, that connection with Josh Allen remains one of the few reliable threads in this passing attack. And that matters. Allen throws confidently when Davis is the target, something he simply doesn't have yet with younger receivers like Keon Coleman. Chemistry takes time, and right now, Buffalo doesn't have the luxury of waiting for it to develop. Davis needs to be on the field, he needs to be involved, and the offense needs to lean into what their quarterback is comfortable with. The front office isn't sitting still either. With injuries stacking up, they've taken swings at every available option, pulling in reinforcements wherever possible in an effort to keep this roster competitive through December. But the road ahead is brutal. Pittsburgh looms immediately, and beyond them sits a cluster of AFC teams clawing for the same playoff real estate: Jacksonville, Baltimore, Los Angeles, Miami. Every slip matters. The pressure is real, and Buffalo enters this weekend without both starting tackles, a scenario no team wants to face against a defense built on pressure and disruption. Still, belief remains strong. The fanbase travels, the team rallies when the stakes rise, and when Josh Allen steps onto the field, the Bills always have a shot. The mission is straightforward: survive this week, fight through the injuries, and keep the season alive. The challenge is steep, but the resolve is just as powerful.